the main character can make or break a video game. Let's take Sonic, for example. Sonic is one of the most simple yet perfectly designed characters in gaming history. His ability, his attitude, everything about him helped set the tone for the level design for the rest of the game. It helped him stand out against Mario, who was considered the video game juggernaut at the time. Now compare Sonic to Tails. Tails is good and all, I really like Tails, but he just doesn't bring the same punch that Sonic does. He's clearly designed to be the side character. But what happens when those characters designed to be side characters gets the spotlight? Today, we're going to look at 4 times the understudies got called up to the big stage. We'll start with Luigi, perhaps the most iconic side character of all time. He started off as just the player 2 option back in the day, where really he was just an off-color version of Mario, right? He was Green Mario. We've all heard the jokes before. However, over time he's really gotten his own identity. He's started off as a taller and slender version of Mario, and that became symbolic with his movements, where he became better at jumping than Mario, but with less precision. There was now an actual trade-off, an actual difference between using Mario versus Luigi. Each had their own pros and cons, but again, he was still just a side character at this time. He's also been characterized as a little bit of a scaredy cat, and that's where his own game comes in. This is what makes Luigi's Mansion a perfect setting for Luigi to shine. Nintendo leaned into Luigi's chicken demeanor. They didn't try to change him or make him cool or edgy for his own title. They leaned into his strengths and weaknesses. So Luigi's Mansion stars Luigi winning a mansion that's filled with ghosts. He must overcome his fear in order to save his brother Mario. It's awesome to see Luigi develop as more than just a player 2 option. He's really blossomed into his own over the last few decades. Next up is Daxter. Daxter was a wise guy, smart-mouth punk through the Jak and Daxter franchise. It's funny to me that in the first game it's called Jak and Daxter, but as the rest of the franchise would go on, they would drop the name Daxter from the title. I feel like this is because of the complete tonal shift from Jak and Daxter to Jak 2. Daxter was the cute animal sidekick, which was appropriate for 3D platformers. But what about when they shifted to a more dark, gritty, adventure-style game? The emphasis was no longer on the lovable duo. Instead, it was all about the titular hero, Jak. Well, it's not all doom and gloom for Daxter. Daxter would go on to get his own game. What's interesting about this is they put him on the PSP. I assume this is because he's a side character, so it just makes sense to put him on the handheld instead of the mainline console. It just fit better as a Sony handheld title. Now, Daxter is an awesome 3D action platformer that I think blends the 2 eras of Jak games perfectly well. You get that more 3D collectathon-centric vibe of Jak and Daxter with the humor and the worlds of Jak 2 and Jak 3. So as someone who enjoyed that trilogy, Daxter was a great spin-off. So I think it's cool that when Daxter's name gets slapped back on a game, it really does give you those PS2 vibes. I really like Daxter. So we're talking about Shadow the Hedgehog next, and Shadow's an interesting one. I never played the Sonic games growing up. I was more of a Mario guy. However, I've always loved Sonic's supporting cast, from Tails to Knuckles to Shadow. And the whole cast, they're just really awesome. So, I remember begging my mom to let me rent Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow got his own game. That's really awesome. For those of you that don't know, Shadow started off on the Dreamcast, a part of the Sonic Adventure series. Just a few short years later, he would get his own game. I believe it's on PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. Someone can fact check me, but I'm pretty sure it's on all 3 of the main consoles. And I remember renting this game. I was 11 when it came out. And boy, did this game surprise me, alright? I didn't know much about it. I just knew I really liked Shadow. Thought he was really cool. So when I saw he was getting his own game, I was all about it. My mom let me rent it. And you would think I was at the right age for something like this. Just gritty, explosive, high-octane adventure. You think that would be screaming my name as an 11-year-old boy. But this game didn't click with me at all. I really could not have got past maybe the first level or two. And perhaps that's because more or less it still felt like playing a Sonic game. You know, it's like Sonic with guns and at night, kind of, you know. And this era, this PS2 time period, I don't know if it was because of what GTA 3 was doing to the gaming industry, but it felt like every franchise wanted a gritty, mature vibe to their games. We just talked about how Jak and Daxter went from a lovable duo collectathon platformer to a more, you know, dark adventure game, right? So Sonic was no different. And this is my interpretation of it. You know, they wanted that edgy teenage style game. And the way I see it is you couldn't really put Sonic as the main character. You know, he's the lovable hero. You know, you don't want him in the game with a lot of guns and violence and explosions and everything. So it just made sense that you had this character, Shadow, already. Seems like he'd be perfect for it. That's my interpretation of Shadow the Hedgehog. Again, I'm not a big Sonic fan, so if I'm off there, guys, feel free to tell me about it. But that's my interpretation. But I think that's really neat because it seems like Sega wanted that dark, gritty game, and they couldn't put Sonic on it. So they allowed a side character to kind of shine. So I think it's really cool, actually. The last character we're talking about today is Diddy Kong. He started off as Donkey Kong's sidekick in Donkey Kong Country, a 2D side-scrolling action platformer. He was fun with a really awesome design. However, he would get a chance to shine almost immediately with Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest, as King K. Rool would kidnap Donkey Kong, forcing Diddy Kong into the main character role. And I'm sure... So this sequel is held in high regards, and I'm sure that's because partly... I mean, yeah, it's a really good game, but it also had Donkey Kong Country slapped on it, a game that had already built up a lot of fan equity, right? So the deck was kind of stacked for Diddy Kong to do well. It was made by Rare, had Donkey Kong Country's name on it. All in all, really well-received sequel. However, just a few short years later, Diddy Kong would land his own game on Nintendo's newest console, the N64, with Diddy Kong Racing. Now, Diddy Kong Racing it was new, it was fun, it was different. It had open worlds, it had boss fights, it had new characters, and of course it had that Rare charm. It was a fresh spin on kart racers in the face of the titan that was Mario Kart 64. And impressively enough, a lot of people say, even to this day I see it all the time, that they prefer Diddy Kong Racing over Mario Kart 64, making it, in my opinion, a very successful spin-off. Diddy Kong has remained active in the gaming world. He's a playable character in the Smash Bros. Series. He's still at Donkey Kong's side in the Donkey Kong Country series. He was even a playable character in Donkey Kong 64. His flagship racer even got ported over to the DS with Diddy Kong Racing DS. And while he's remained relevant in gaming, it's still hard to see a new Diddy Kong Racing game getting greenlit if even F-Zero cannot get one. Not to mention Rare, Diddy Kong's creator, has gone on to live at the farm up north. So a fun part of doing this topic is seeing all the different ways and reasons they try out these side characters. Luigi and Diddy Kong got completely different genres from their main protagonist counterparts. Daxter was used to help sell the Sony handheld PSP, while Shadow was used to test out a more teenage-centric, edgy attitude. It's neat to see some of these ideas played out and what they ultimately became. So guys, that does it for part 1. What's your favorite game or character we talked about today, and which characters should be in part 2? We've left off plenty of great side characters who went on to get their own games, so don't forget to comment who you think should be in part 2. Subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.